Hey, how are you? I'm SliceofOtaku, and it is an incredible time to be a fan of Western cartoons, especially if you enjoy ones with persistent continuity like me. I adore cartoons in general, and when it comes to overarching plots and continuous storytelling, that admiration may easily manifest itself into much more because I'm sort of a lore whore. I love it when fictional worlds are thoroughly fleshed out, and when that is the case, I feel like it's a lot easier to get attached to a series. And right now, it seems like the networks feel the very same way because with 2019, we will be receiving a bunch of new cartoons that follow this model. So with this video, I just want to discuss what we currently know of these new cartoons and share my thoughts on each of them. And so starting with Cartoon Network, we have Victor and Valentino, created by Diego Molino. Now the world we're cast into with the pilot is one heavily littered with Mexican cultural references, which very much reminded me of El Tigre or Mucha Lucha, two cartoons which I thoroughly enjoyed as a kid. And it seems like the intended intrigue of this world happens to be otherworldly. The two main characters, Victor and Valentino, unwillingly enter the underworld and have to complete a maze in order to avoid death. And during this, we receive a quick montage of experiences they have here, and I'm interested. The things that they encounter seem like they could be really interesting if fleshed out with their own focus and importance. And I think that when this becomes a full-blown series, linking real-world influences to occurrences or characters in the show could be really fun to do. And it looks like this is intended to be a bro dude type of show, which is pretty common with cartoons, but in terms of current plot-focused cartoons is something that immediately separates it from its contemporaries. And what I like about this particular dynamic is the fact that they're not exactly best friends right off the bat and are often at odds due to their differing personalities, and seemingly more. Victor and Valentino are apparently half-brothers that share a common father, to which Valentino seemingly holds a bit of animosity towards, as it's implied that Victor was formerly with him. And with their grandmother being a sort of otherworldly being, their lineage is made instantly intriguing. And I feel like the sensation of exploring the oddities of this world, coupled by the formation of a friendship between these two distant brothers, is what'll keep people watching. And it seems as though many of the elements present within this pilot are comparable to that of Gravity Falls, a show said to be instrumental in the creation of this current wave. And unfortunately, I haven't yet seen enough Gravity Falls myself to corroborate this statement, but I just hope that Victor and Valentino is able to set itself apart at the end of the day, as people of course love Gravity Falls, but nobody wants a clone. Next up, we have Infinity Train, created by Owen Dennis, which was finally officially announced to have a 2019 release on the way, which I could not be happier about. The release of the pilot online was met with a ton of praise at the end of 2016 and quickly garnered a lot of hype for itself. And as a result, the pilot made its way to television at one point, and despite it being the earliest time slot possible and having already seen it over a dozen times at that point, I was up watching, showing support, advocating that everyone interested in the future of the show do the exact same. So yeah, the hype is real. And because of this hype, I consider Infinity Train to be the sort of flagship series for this new wave of 2019 plot-focused cartoons, which admittedly does imply a bit of pressure as the expectations are a bit high, which can become troublesome. But the thing to remember is that what we saw was a pilot, and the end product could end up looking nothing like what we saw. Pretty much like how the pilot for Steven Universe looks radically different from the Steven Universe we know today. And to be honest, it's a bit hard to pinpoint what makes this show so special and desirable without going on for a while about it, but to me, it just reeks of potential. And the mystery surrounding the contents of the pilot just leave you with so many more questions that you can't help but ask for more. It has a bit of familiarity to a degree, but it also feels very different, and that is refreshing. Next, we have a series that actually debuted its pilot on the Cartoon Network YouTube channel, but ended up being sold to Netflix. 12 Forever, created by Julia Vickerman. Now, with the pilot iteration, we follow Shane and 12 as they transition from a typical school setting to Party Island, a fantasy world created by 12's subconscious out of a strong desire to never grow up. Now, for the initial school portion of the pilot, the names of these two characters is never said. It's only when we enter the world of Party Island that they are, and with that, the name 12 seems to be a sort of alias, only used in her world, and her actual name is never given. But with the announcement of the show being picked up by Netflix, we learned that her name is Reggie. But yeah, like I said before, the world of Party Island is something that came into creation due to 12's subconscious. If she really wants something to exist there badly enough, eventually it'll come to be. And this realm of hers does actually exist, as items and people can both enter and exit from the real world. And when I first saw the pilot, it reminded me of something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it for a long time. But now I realize that it reminds me of Chalk Zone. Chalk Zone is a Nickelodeon show that I grew up with, and at that age, if you tried to convince me that cartoons weren't real, I would not believe you. Not only was I a Kids Next Door operative, but I vividly remember drawing Snap and holes to Chalk Zone in kindergarten. So from a sentimental value standpoint, I guess, I really appreciate that aspect of 12 Forever. And so I hope it can make a lot of kids happy and just excite them to be creative. And for me, the intrigue of this world is very low key and might just be me reading too deep into things, but that's kind of what I do with everything, so who cares? Now, in terms of conflict, it seems like 12 will be battling with maturity, not only from the real world, but also within her escape world. And once more, because the world of Party Island came to be due to her subconscious, she's likely to have to face physical manifestations of her issues. Things that bother her, things that you can't exactly see on the surface, which is really cool to me. Take this guy Big Deal for example. He's a very cowardly and submissive follower, but his name and his tie add new meaning to our perception of what his character means. It's likely that he represents a sort of disdain 12 has for what she knows of the corporate world, and so by exploring this wacky world, we may decipher a whole new world of meaning behind just about everything, and by extension, allows for a better understanding of 12 as a character. And what's interesting about the main antagonist of this series is that just like 12, we don't receive her proper name. Instead, we're given a nickname, Butt Witch, which she clearly does not like. So I'm looking forward to exploring her significance for sure. Now, stylistically, I'd say that 12 Forever is pretty distinct. It has a style of its own, which I think is admirable these days. It clearly has some 80s aesthetic influences, but never does it ever become unbearable or distracting. It actually amplifies it. And the animation is pretty fluid. The action sequence of 12 combating a giant baby Tristan is particularly clean and excited me, as other shows of this nature tend to skimp out on combat despite its potential to complement the narrative. So it's always a welcomed addition. Now, in terms of how the pilot differs from what's set to be the final product, instead of Shane, 12 is accompanied by two new characters named Todd and Esther. Now, as far as I can tell, a lot of people feel like Cartoon Network missed out on something great with this show. But hey, for us as the consumer, this could very well work better in our favor, and I say this because Netflix shows are more flexible with their runtimes. And so based on other Netflix original cartoons, we'll most likely be receiving 23-minute episodes rather than 11 or 12-minute episodes, which I for one thoroughly appreciate. Moving forward once again, we have two shows from Disney whose creators both worked on Gravity Falls. And now, unlike all the other shows we've discussed so far, neither of these two shows have pilots out. Really, we only have a few doodles, but we work with what we get. The first two of these shows being Amphibia, created by Matt Braley. Amphibia is set to follow the adventures of Anne Bunchui, which I hope I did not just butcher. Now, Anne is characterized as a self-centered teen who is transported to the world of Amphibia by means of magic. Amphibia apparently being a rural marshland world of frog people, in which she meets Sprig, a young frog person who becomes her first true friend, helping her on her journey to becoming a hero. Now yeah, instantly it's made clear that this is a very unique show in terms of premise, which is cool and makes it a sort of oddball. Now, because only a single Disney orchestrated promotional image has been provided for these two shows, they're likely expected to convey what audiences can expect, and it just looks like a wacky, inviting, fun time. And from the looks of it, this may be Anne's first glimpse of the world of Amphibia, which is the reason for her expression of amazement and wonder, precisely the sort of feeling I'm sure they want us to have as we watch. Now, to call Anne a self-centered teenager and have Spring be her first true friend serves to paint a picture of her life prior to entering this world. Now, because she's referred to as a teenager, at the very least she must be 13 years old. So for her to live for 13 years without a single true friend is a bit strange, and it's important that we recognize that oddity because it could allude to a troubled background, which, you know, has my attention a bit, and the disregarding of her phone falling out of her bag I think serves to be a statement piece as to how wonderful this world is, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. And now lastly, we have the Owl House created by Dana Terrace. The Owl House follows Luz, characterized to be a self-centered teenager who enters a portal to the demon realm by accident. Here she becomes friends with the tiny warrior king and the rebellious witch Edda. And despite her lack of any magical abilities whatsoever, she becomes Edda's apprentice in order to fulfill her dream of becoming a witch. Now, this is a series I have high hopes for and expect to be major, and a lot of that is due to my fascination with the work of Dana Terrace. The Owl House is said to be a horror comedy, something that I feel is very much prevalent within her artwork. She is expertly capable of meshing the cutesy with the grotesque, and so I'm really expecting the demon realm to be utterly mesmerizing, a sort of captivating and alluring yet repulsive world. I feel as though that strong contradiction will truly make this show one of a kind. But at the same time, like Steven Universe or Star vs. the Forces of Evil, I'm also expecting the Owl House to draw reference from the magical girl subcategory of anime, to which its creator seems to very much be a fan of. And you know, my initial thought when seeing the promotional art went directly to Little Witch Academia, which guess what? Dana seems to really like as well. And if this compilation of some of her favorite characters serves to be any indication of the sorts of characters we can expect from the Owl House, or even what may be implied about the quote-unquote rebellious nature of Ada, then this show is already a banger as far as I'm concerned. Guys, the future ahead of us looks so bright when it comes to these shows. I mean, we already have the likes of OKKO Let's Be Heroes, Steven Universe, Voltron Legendary Defender, and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, so having even more shows to look forward to is bound to be an amazing feeling and hopefully make those hiatuses a bit more bearable. And as far as I can tell, strategically, this is precisely the sort of content these networks should be looking towards, as plot sells, and more than that, engulfing viewers into interesting worlds can lead to dedicated followings, which, as we all know, can be a very powerful thing. With the decline of television viewership, the only reason a lot of us, myself included, turn to the television is when there is a new episode release of something where progression matters. And shows like these very much adhere to binge watching culture, which is very favorable when it comes to apps and online services. And then of course there's free publicity and promotion from enthusiastic viewers like me on YouTube and such. And with that being said, at this particular moment, I plan on covering every single one of these shows on my channel when they come out, or whenever any news surfaces, because they're kind of my kind of cartoons. They have a sort of progression that's commonplace with anime, making them all a slice of otaku, if you will. Yeah, the name of my channel has a ton of potential meanings, and this happens to be one of them. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video and have some new shows to look forward to for yourselves. Let me know which of the shows that I mentioned you are most excited for and why in the comments. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.